Am I on? Can you hear me? I'm going to start right away with a lady from Chicago wrote. She wrote a book, A Pebble in My Shoe. What you're going to hear today is what a boy of 10 or 11 years remembers, or how I remember it. So I didn't do any research. It was never my intent to do research. I just want to talk about as I remember it. Once in a while I have to look in some books, like in this case here, to quote. And I'm going to start right out what she said. It was a meeting between Churchill, Stalin, and Roosevelt. They met at Potsdam. And here's what she said. The devastating decision at Potsdam displaced 15 million ethnic German people between 1944 and 1948, and thereby dispossessed them of all their properties. At least 2,100,000 of them were murdered or died of diseases or starvation in concentration camps, such as Gwakovo and Kuševo. Those were the two biggest concentration camps in Croatia, in Yugoslavia. During a recent German-American gathering in Washington, D.C., President George W. Bush acknowledged that the above-described displacement of 15 million Germans was the largest ethnic cleansing in human history. Very few Americans know about this, and they didn't, and they don't. And I don't know the reason why they should. The reason I read that is because I'm one of the 15 million. I am a DP, a displaced person. I was born in Yugoslavia, in the state of Croatia. At that time it was Yugoslavia and Croatia. Now there's no more Yugoslavia, and Croatia is a country. I was born May 1st, 1934, to ethnic German parents. And there was nothing going on until Germany invaded Yugoslavia. That was I think in April of 1941. Up to that point, for about 250 years, the Croatian people and the ethnic German people in Croatia or in Yugoslavia, they got along great. But after 1941, when Hitler invaded Germany, the Croatian people had to make a decision, either to stay with Hitler or go with the Croatian people. So they decided, and it was usually half and half. Half of the people would decide to stay with Hitler, the other half would go with communism. It was nothing unusual to find that son against father, mother against daughter. So it was a very difficult time. For the Germans, it was not that hard. We were automatically German. I mean, Hitler walked in and it was Heil Hitler. Either that or something a lot worse. My dad was drafted in the German army at 39 and wasn't too happy. He had 5 children, so he wasn't too happy, but he was drafted. Either that or prison or even worse. Things went along. Marshal Tito, who was the rebel after the German invaded Yugoslavia, he retreated into the woods and he stayed there. He made raids on German villages, and they got worse as time went on. The worst thing that can happen, it did. 1944, in October, we were told that we had to leave. We could stay, we weren't forced, but we were asked to leave. We were, how should I say, pressured into leaving. We had a choice. We could stay and be captured by the Russian front that was coming in, or move out, leave our country and move out. I woke up one morning, I'll never forget that, and the streets were full of our people, village people, crying and screaming, kind of lost, kind of didn't know what to do, but everybody was crying. What happened? we had to leave. We had to leave. Even I was crying. I don't know why, probably because all the rest of them were crying. So I cried too. But we were told that we had to leave. We could stay and turn communism or leave into nowhere. So what happened? Pack the wagon, hitch the horses, take whatever you can, or the least that you need, and go. Where to? We didn't know where we were going. We knew that we were going either to Austria or Germany. Our village had about 130 house numbers. More than half had wagons. The other half probably didn't. The ones that had wagons, they would stop in Austria and be dumped off on farmers in Austria. The ones that didn't have wagons, like in our case, we wound up in Germany. They put us into a train, cattle kind of train, whatever, cattle, yeah. And we went off to Germany, not knowing where we were going. Now remember, we were dumped on those people. They didn't like us, even though we were German. Austria is German, and we wound up in Germany. They didn't like us. We were dumped on them. And I'm sure they hear that all the time, that we were foreigners, damned foreigners, gypsies, that's what they called us. We got to Germany, a small village, and our family was split up. My mom, my brother, and I were in one place, my sister another, and my other sister another family. So they were maids. The two sisters, completely different. One of them had a great family. She loved them, and they loved her. My other sister, if you would talk about a German, she would spit him in the face, because she was treated like a slave. She was. At that time, that particular farmer, and it was the richest farmer in the village, he had still prisoners. One of them was a Russian woman, one was a French, and they had two more. So there were a total of 4 prisoners, and my sister had to be with the prisoners. She could not go into a house. She had to stay with the prisoners. So they treated them badly. I gotta go faster. We stayed in Germany for about 6 months. After 6 months, we decided to go back to Austria because all my relatives were in Austria because they stayed in Austria. So we decided to go back to Austria. How we got there, I don't know. My sister would know. My 16-year-old sister was now in charge. She had to take over. She had to lead us, and she had to do the best she could, and she did at 16 years of age. We wound up on a train station. I remember that one, because we had to decide whether to, we had one blanket, whether to have it on the floor as whatever, or the blanket to cover. I know it had to be early, maybe early spring or late spring and early summer. It was still cold, so I figure it was probably March or April. But anyway, we wound up over there. We decided to keep on going. We went to find our relatives in Austria. We did find them on a big farm. When we got there, the Russians were already there. They occupied that part of Austria. We had no problems with the Russians, because one of my sisters, she could read Cyrillic, which was the Russian alphabet. She could read because she had to, long story short again, because after Germany lost the First World War, they had to learn how to speak or read and write the Croatian. Although, all through the 250 years that we were over there, we Germans never changed. It was always German, okay? So stubborn Germans, and that's why we're ethnic Germans, I guess. Anyway, the Russians told us when they got there, we don't belong there, why don't we go back home? And that's all my mom needed to hear. We're going back home. We couldn't go back home. How are we going back home? We don't have anything. The Russians not only told us to go back, they even supplied the wagons and a pair of oxen for our wagon, because we didn't have one. So we had a wagon from the Russians, which they took from the Austrians and gave it to us. So here we go back. Now it's 1944, May, beginning of May, I think the war was over. All the ethnic Germans that were in Austria and Germany, they wanted to go back. Suppose 90% of them were held up at the border. Why we made it, I don't know. But later on I'll tell you why we think we made it. So we started going back, okay? The first night, It was only about, we traveled maybe 20, 25 miles. We stopped in an empty lot. Okay, our caravan, there were probably 4 wagons. I think 2 of them had horses and 2 of them had oxen like ours. So we started out, we stayed overnight. The first night, and this is what I read or wrote when I took autobiography 4 or 5 years ago. Anyway, my youngest brother, my young brother, I only have one, was 4 years younger than I. He was probably 6 years at the time. He was closest to my mom because she always held him and whatever. He always thought that the reason we made it through all of that without being killed or wind up in a concentration camp because our mother always prayed. And this is what I wrote. Your lips, Mom, are moving. You are praying. You always pray. What do you pray for? Did you ask God to let you go home to see your house one more time? If you did, your prayers were answered. You did go back to see your home, but not as an owner, but as an unwanted guest. Yes, Mom, we made it. I have not met any one of the displaced Dona Swabians, that's what they called us, who crossed the border into Yugoslavia as we did and lived to talk about it. We were the chosen people. We walked the desert. It seemed like 40 years, but it was only 4 months. A 4-month journey to hell and back. All of it could have been avoided if you would have recognized the danger signs of our journey. Mom, do you remember the first night? I do. I remember it well. Rape. As a 10-year-old, I don't think I knew what it meant, but I did know that it was something bad done to women. Whenever that word was spoken or just heard, women would look for places to hide. That first night, shortly before nightfall, I saw 2 Russian soldiers, there could have been more, but I don't remember 2, approaching our small caravan. I saw my 20-year-old sister on top of a wagon, cradling my 6-year-old brother in her lap, pretending he was her baby. As the soldier approached the wagon, expecting the worst, my sister and brother started to cry and scream. The soldier did not climb the wagon. They left, but they did not stop looking. The next they stopped where my 14-year-old sister was hiding under the wagon, trying to lose herself among older women. And when they lifted the blanket, she started to act like a little girl. It worked. They said he was too young. And I could understand that because I do some Croatian. I can speak some of it. She was too young, and it was also dark, so they couldn't see her. My mother was not too far away from the wagon where my third sister was hiding. They didn't see my sister, and they kept on looking. When they saw my mother, one of the soldiers reached out for her, but before he could put his hands on her, I put my arms around her, holding tightly. He tried to pry me loose. The harder he tried, the tighter I held on. I would not let go. I started to cry. Next, I could feel his hand in my face. He hit me with the back of his hand. I could feel blood running from my mouth and nose. I would not let go. Mom, it didn't hurt. It didn't touch you. It didn't hurt, Mom. It didn't get to you. I love you. A mother who on numerous occasions was willing and ready to sacrifice her life for her family and children, did not heed the danger signs of that first night. You most likely remembered how mistreated and humiliated we were in Germany and Austria. It was abundantly clear that we did not belong there. We were not wanted. We were damned foreigners, cursed foreigners. Perhaps I will never know what drove you, but I know that you would have faced all dangers if you would have thought you could find a better life, a better future for your family and children. Next day, we crossed the border from Austria into Yugoslavia. And now were we in the hands of Marshal Tito, who was determined to eradicate all the German people, and he did. That's why we had all the different concentration camps. I don't know how long the trip took. We had, like I said, oxen and a wagon, and oxen are strong, but they're slow. So the trip was walking and begging, and walking and begging. I don't know how long it took. Every time we came to a small city, the communists, the Tito's soldiers, partisans, would turn our wagon inside out, take whatever they wanted, and let us go. And that happened every so often, every city we got to. When we got to a place about 80 kilometers from our home, they put us into a yard, told us to get off the wagon, and whatever we had on our body, that's all we had left. That was all ours. That was all we had left on us, nothing else. All the rest of it they took away from us. I remember there was a woman who had a small baby. She asked for a pillow. They didn't even give her that. So nothing. Whatever we had on our body, that was all we had. They drove us off from our wagons in that hall. They lined us up, and I remember that vividly. They lined us up, and there were 16 of us. I counted them because I was the last one on that end. When the officer turned his head and told his enlisted guy to go and get the rifle, I ran out the door because I wasn't ready to get, to die yet, because I was sure this was the end of it. Because they said it in Croatian. He said, "Donesi pušku," that I knew and I could understand that it was go and get the rifle. I thought this was the end. I ran out the gate. I don't know why, because I didn't, what was I going to do out there? I didn't know anybody, it was nothing. But my aunt, one of my aunts, who married my uncle, whose name was Kostelensky, which was not a German name. They were allowed to go, but we were not. So I went to my aunt and I told my aunt they're going to kill him because they lined him up and he's got to get the rifle, they're going to kill him. And she didn't know what to do with me, so I stayed there for a while, but she said, "Look, we didn't hear any shots. Apparently they did not kill him. Why don't you go back?" So I went back and they didn't shoot him. They were up in the attic in a small building laughing. I don't know, some lady told a joke. Half an hour prior to that, they were ready to be killed. Now she was telling a joke. That was the first night. The next morning, they sent us, put us on a wagon, and took us to a river. Supposedly, that if we would cross that river, we would wind up in Hungary, and we wind up eventually in the hands of the Russian. We would be over there as a Russian labor. The barge to get us over, transportation to go over there, never showed up. Another miracle, never showed up. Okay? So they told us we had to go. After a while we could go. But before we left, or before while we were waiting over there, this partisan told my sister to go and take a swim in that river. And she told him, "If you want to kill me, you're going to have to do it where I am. I'm not going swimming." It was my stubborn sister, and she was stubborn. Yes, she was really stubborn. Anyway, and that was about 80 kilometers from our home. So they said, "Okay, we can't get across the river, so you can go home." So now we go 80 kilometers walking and begging. We always begged. It was begging and walking, and always afraid. hunger and fear. Hunger is always with you. Fear is not. There's a point where you'd probably rather die than go through what you have to go through. So fear was not that important anymore. It was hunger. Hunger was a constant companion, and hunger is difficult. So we did get home. After I don't know how many days of walking, because I never know how many days. I know I was there. How I got there, I don't remember. I was 10 years old. So we did get home. We stayed at our home for about 3 or 4 weeks, and we were told that was long enough, we have to leave. They put us in a camp. The camp had to be the closest to our village. And in that camp, the thing that I remember, sitting in circle with a bunch of other young children, and I saw my sister looking that way, close to a telephone pole, and I couldn't figure out why my sister was there. But it was my sister, the stubborn one, the 16-year-old. So I never thought too much about it, because it's my sister, she's always in trouble anyway. On this side over here, I saw people walking day and night around this one barrack that kept on walking. And later on, I found out that my sister had refused to pick herbs for the camp commander. And as a punishment, she was tied to a telephone pole looking in the sun for 4 hours, guarded by a partisan. On this side over here, the people walking was a bathroom, a toilet, not a bathroom, a toilet. All it was a trench with a log across it, and the people would walk, so as soon as somebody got up from that, they would go and take their place. That was the first time I saw a dead body. The body did not look human, to me anyway. It looked yellow. So we're in that camp, and I'm convinced now that that camp was later on one of the concentration camps. There were people there when we got there, okay? But we didn't get anything to eat, or whatever we get was very little and unsalted. There was no salt available. I remember that. So we stayed there, and my sister, my 16-year-old sister, she volunteered us to go to work. They were looking for workers, and she volunteered us to work. But we weren't a workforce. We didn't have anybody. 4 women, my mom and 3 sisters, and my younger brother and I. A young man from our village came walking toward us, and my sister turned to my mom, and she said, "From now on, this man or this young man is your son." Why not? We didn't have any papers. Nobody had any papers. They didn't know what I could be. I don't know, Prince Eugene or somebody, anybody. There were no papers. I could be anybody. But from now on, that was my mom's son and my brother. Now we had a workforce, and we left that camp because of that. Otherwise, we couldn't have left it, and we probably would have been there and wound up in a concentration camp and starved with the rest of the 2 million. Another miracle. So we got to that place to work, and we worked for I don't know how long. My brother and I, because my brother was, like I said, 6 years old, I was 10, our job was to watch cabbage field from the animals. I don't know what animals would eat cabbage, but that's what we had to do, to make sure that the cabbage wasn't eaten. I don't know what kind of work my sister did, my sisters, because they took them off in the morning and brought them back in the evening. How long it took, I don't know. Everything that I know is everything took 2 or 3 weeks. So after a certain amount of time, they told us, we can go back home. And we were all set and ready to go back home. They put us in a train, of course a cattle, kind of a wagon train, took us back to home, to our village. They stopped by the village, okay, opened the gates but we couldn't get off. They would not let us off. We had to stay in there. We stayed there for I don't know how long. The relatives from a village, they did get us some food, so we had at least something to eat. And then they closed the gate again, and the next thing I knew, we wound up in Austria. Now we are back again in Austria in another camp. But that camp, to me, it looked like a collective camp. Some of the people that wanted to go back to Yugoslavia, and maybe others that then come back, because I don't know. I don't even remember the barracks. The only thing that I remember from that camp, I don't even remember the barracks. I'm not even sure where there was a camp, but I remember lights, little lights all over. I wasn't quite sure whether there was a fire to make coffee or a fire to warm your hands. I don't know, but anyway, it was something. I don't know how long we stayed there. Another relative, for some reason, living not too far away from that camp in an old castle, found out that we were in that camp. So one day she came over there and she actually smuggled us out. It was not, how should I say, death-threatening thing to do, but it was still illegal. So she had to somehow get us out of that camp, and she was a great lady. She had a two-wheel wagon where she had some stuff that she put on there, and she told the guy, you know who I am, I see you have it so often, just kept on walking. And I and my sister and one of her sons went through a cornfield. And I remember the time by the seasons, like in this case here, the corn was not ripe yet. It was only still high enough we could hide and green. So it had to be, what, August, September, okay? So they kept us in that castle hidden. We had to hide because they were still looking for us, so we had to hide. But we stayed in that castle for about another probably 3 or 4 weeks. And then we didn't know where to go. Sooner or later we had to leave, so we did go. But the only place we knew where to go was the place that we came from 4 months before we left. So we are back. We made the circle. The same place where we worked in Austria, where we started out, we are back there now. Found out later on that that family that lived in an old castle, the castle burned down, and they wound up in the camp that they smuggled us out of. So now we're back. We're back in Austria. My dad was not available. My dad was still in the army someplace. We didn't know where or why or yeah. All he knew is they told them to stay away from the east and go to the west, because if you're going to the west, you'd be captured by the English, which he was. He was captured by the English. But he was never with us until way later on, but that's another story. So that's the story of a 10-year-old. Now, we are back in Austria, okay? Somehow, my one uncle and the foreman of that farm in Austria, they had some kind of an argument that they didn't get along at all. So we found out that there was another camp about 80 kilometers from where we are at the farm. I don't know how they found out that there was another camp someplace, but it was a military camp for German soldiers. So it was not a concentration camp. It was just someplace to put us because there was no housing, shortage of housing. They put us in barracks. Our number in the camp was 65. So I take it Austria had 65 camps, or at least that many, because we were number 65. In that city that we stayed, there were 4 camps like that, 62, 63, 64, and 65. And we stayed in that camp for 5.5 years. But it was not bad. Actually, it was all right. It was not that bad. It got better every year. Every year it got better, because it was not a camp just to stay in. I mean, they had to put us someplace. The only unfortunate thing was, but in many cases, there were as many as 24 people in one room. In our case, there were only 14. It was my one uncle, and they were 7, and we had 7 in our family, so there were 14 of us. And then in 1950, 51, 52, even before that, little by little, the people from the camps left and went either to France, to Australia, to Brazil. And we, in 1952, decided to go to America. And that's another story. That's where the good times started. Up to that point, it was horrible. I will tell you one funny story about the camp in Austria. We didn't have any toys. I mean, there was nothing available. What we did, we played chess, we did crossword puzzle, we played ping pong, and we played soccer, okay? But we didn't have any soccer balls. I mean, we made everything. We made a ball from rags and strings and played with that, and all we got out of that was bloody knees and bloody toes. But this one kid said, he said, you know, he said, I have an aunt in America, and America's got everything. Why don't I just write them and ask her to send me a football? So he wrote her, and a few weeks later, I guess we got a package, or he did, and we opened it up, and there was a football, and we looked at that. It was an American football. And of course, looked at it and said, you know, the Americans must be really good or really stupid, because how can you play with that ball? I mean, there's no way you can play with the ball. So that was one of the funny stories. Questions? Anybody? Anybody? Any questions?
Did you have a school in the camp in Austria for the 5 years?
Let me. Yes, we met every so often, but I don't remember having paper or pencil. So it was more like a meeting rather than schooling. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't, but we had some kind of, I don't remember. I don't remember we had, because I don't remember having a paper. Yeah, so I don't know if we had any. But after I turned 14, you know, the teacher that we had, and it was a legitimate teacher, an ethnic German teacher in the camp, he said, well, you're not one of the dumbest guys. Why don't you try and go to Austrian school? So I did go, but I had to start in the 7th grade. So, and here's another unusual thing. In Austria at that time, the subjects were assigned by the government, and you had to take them. Whatever they said, you had to take them. And of course, they took English in the 5th grade, and I'm starting in the 7th. And I meet the English teacher, and she looked at me and she says, door. I said, yeah. Window. Yeah. I mean, anyway, so I was already 2 years behind. It seemed like I was always 2 years behind in everything. I don't know. But anyway, so that was another unusual thing. But I did take the oral test, and I was lucky enough to, so I actually did go to school for 2 years in the Austrian school. Yeah. Yes?
When you came to America, did you come to Ohio first or somewhere else?
We had actually relatives in Akron that came over in 1905. It was my dad's aunt, okay? And somehow, don't ask me how these things worked out, because I don't know how people got where they wanted to go, because there were no maps, there was no nothing. I don't know how they got in touch, but somehow we got in touch with the aunt in Akron. And because we had to have a sponsor to come over here. And in our case, it was the Catholic Church that sponsored us. Father Wolf, I don't know if any of you remember him, he was the one that signed the papers. So, yeah. But they sent us the money for the train fare, and we wound up in Akron. They were happy days. I mean, you know, now everything is, you know. A lot of the things that I would like to have known or remembered if I was smart enough to ask my sisters. But when this whole thing started out, I met with my sister. I talked about it. Prior to that, we didn't mention it, but I took that autobiography course, so I wanted to know something more. So I met with my sister. We talked about it. We at the same place at the same time. She sees one thing, the other one sees one thing, and I see one thing. I said, you know, It's going to be my autobiography, so I am going to write the way I saw it and the way I remember it. Now, there are a lot of things that, like I said, I don't remember. I don't remember how we got from one place to another. I know I was there, but how I got there, I don't remember. The times that the seasons, okay? Like on that railroad, it was still cold, so I figured it was spring. On that working where we worked, I figured it was summer because they were out in the field working, harvesting the wheat. So it had to be June, July, whatever. In that cornfield, it had to be August, September, whatever. So that's how I remember it. Otherwise, I wouldn't know. It was always 2 or 3 weeks. So, yes.
Did your parents come with you? When did your father?
Yeah,
get a
well,
job with you?
we were together with the exception of my father, but we didn't know where our father was. So he didn't go through all that. He was captured by the English. And,
Did he ever catch up with you?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah. We were blessed, no doubt about it. And maybe my brother is sure that we went through all that without winding up in a concentration camp or whatever, because my mom always prayed. He is convinced, and I couldn't argue with him, because it was one miracle after another that we made through. Because one of them, a relative of mine and a friend who lives here in Akron, was in a concentration camp for 3.5 years. And I just talked to her prior to this speech over here. They were loaded on a train and shipped into Yugoslavia, and they automatically wound up in a concentration camp. I suppose, I don't know, 90% of the people that tried to go back wound up in concentration camps. We didn't. And it was about the same time that all of this happened, within weeks, you know. And I asked my cousin, I said, how come we made it and you didn't? I mean, you were there with us. I mean, at the border, you know. How come you didn't make it? I don't know why they were held up. But he told me, he said he thinks that we made it. We probably were about a week or 2 ahead of everybody else. And that could be true. I don't know. Because we went on our own. We didn't depend on anybody, except we decided that the Russians said, let's go back. And so we went our own. So, yeah. Yeah.
Did you go to school in Akron?
Did I go to school? Oh, yes, I did.
And where
Oh, yeah, I went to school for 15 years.
what school?
Oh. My daughter's laughing. Yes, yeah.
First 4, he didn't know any English.
Yeah, I was already 2 years late. No, yeah. Yeah. This is my daughter, yeah. Yeah, I was going to have her read it because I always get emotional. I read that thing 100 times, and I always, I just can't, yeah.
You didn't go to high school here, did you? Did you go to high school?
No,
Just
no.
college?
I went straight to college. I was so doggone smart at American college.
What college?
Oh,
Akron U. Akron U, yeah. Yeah. I after this, and then I don't know. But anyway, how much time do we have?
As much as you want. I don't think anybody's gonna.
Okay. Someday, if I have a chance, I would tell you the other story once I come over to the States. But I will tell you about my college education. I got a letter from Akron U soccer coach. Okay, while I was in the Marine Corps, I was drafted, or not drafted, but asked by the government to join us, you know, to come with us. So I did. I volunteered to be a Marine. I was going to be drafted, but I volunteered to be a Marine, but I wanted nothing but the best. So I got a letter from the Akron U soccer coach. He wanted me to play soccer, okay? I said, I can't go. I mean, if I add my school years, okay, I had 6 years, and I'm bragging, probably a total of 6 years. So he said, well, they have to take you because it's a municipal college. They have to take you regardless what their tests are. So I did flunk everything, you know, whatever they gave me, I mean, you know. So I started out at Akron U, And of course, I thought I was there to play soccer, not to get an education. Why would I get an education? I was drafted to play soccer. First day at Akron U, first hour was English. How lucky can you get? So the professor said, okay, write something that happened to you during your summer vacation, all this and that. I looked around, these guys are writing all around me, some of them already 1 page or 2, and I'm still thinking. So so I say, I have to write something, so I wrote about 3/4 of a page. Handed it in, came back, all marked red. Marked red. The professor says, come out, talk to me, and says, what's your English background? I said, well, let's see, 4 years in machine shop, 2 years in Marine Corps. I know all the cuss words you can think of. So he says, okay, here's your paper, take it back with you and correct it and hand it in. I corrected it, handed it in, came back all red. But on top, he said, Kungl, you won't be a smash in this class, but you'll do. So that was my, yes. I was a great student. I loved Akron U. I went there forever. I took American history because I wanted to be American, so I'm not going to take European history. I came from there. I take American history. Mr. Nepper, never forget him. He was a great teacher, okay? I take the test. Came back, turned the page, F. F. But he left a note. Don't give up. You're going to make it. Keep on going. Write another paper, turn the page, another F. He said, don't give up. You're doing a lot better. There was a time when I thought one F was better than another. So after I finally graduated, after about 15 years, I did get my diploma. I didn't even know I had a diploma, and I just found it. I did graduate. Yes, I did graduate. So I got a job at Goodyear, and it's kind of boring. Even though it was a great place to work, but that was kind of boring. So I went back to school. I mean, why not? Go back for more punishment. But Goodyear paid for it, so I went back, and I didn't declare my GI Bill. So I actually got money going to school. So what do they do? When you go to school, the teacher says, well, tell me something about you. So you get up and you say, okay, my name is Fritz Kungl, and well, how long have you been here? I said, well, here I can tell you. I said, when I started out, my history professor was Mr. Nepper, then he was Dr. Nepper, now he's Dean Nepper, and I'm still here. Any more questions? I'm glad I could do this. This is fun. The first part was sad, but this is fun. Yeah. Any more questions?
One in the back.
Yes.
I was wondering, once you got here to America, did you and your siblings and your family all stay together, or did you kind of go separate ways into college and work and things like that?
I didn't hear.
Did everyone stay in Akron? Yeah.
Did everybody stay in Akron? Yeah. Everybody stayed in Akron. Yes.
Until whenever Sons of Mine moved. When was that? 80s? No. 90s?
Yeah, I don't know. But
Yeah.
when we came over, we
Yeah,
stayed
we
here
all
for
stayed
quite a
in.
while. Yeah. And everybody worked. I remember my dad. We come over here together. I remember Dad. The first thing he did, we went buy a house. We did buy a house on Talbot Avenue, $7,000. Every penny that we made went to the house. What did he say? He says, from now on, if I have a house, I know I have a home, and nobody's going to take it away from me. Not anymore. So that was it. I was in the Marine Corps for 2 years, and I think just before I was discharged, I got a letter from home that said we paid the house off. So that was the first thing. Everything that we had to go through the house, except me. I was in the Marine Corps. Yeah, they worked and I did whatever. I worked in a machine shop. I had a great time. And I loved Akron U. I went there forever, why wouldn't I? I mean, you know, it grows on you. So anyway, to the young people, never give up. I'm telling you, never give up. Once I started Akron U, I said, no way, no way. I don't care how many Fs I get. I'm not going to quit. And I didn't. It took me a long time, but I made it. So don't give up. Don't give up. Another unusual thing, my one daughter, my youngest daughter, pretty smart. I mean, my kids were all smart, a lot smarter than I. I mean, one of them is an English professor. Yeah, Carla, doctor, yeah. And I think she did it to correct me. But anyway, where was I? Yes.
You have a question here?
Mr. Claus.
Where did you meet your wife, Rose?
I met my wife, Rose, in church, in the choir. She came over in 1950, yeah, a year before I did. And she was in a choir, and it was the Croatian church on Arlington Street before they put the highway in. Yeah, so that's where we met. And
Ironically, tell her where she lived.
how then?
Ironically, tell them where Mom lived, where she grew up.
Oh, yeah, well, she grew up in Giacomo, which was only about 25 miles from where I grew up. Yeah. But we had to come all to America to meet over here. Destiny. Yeah. Yes.
I had a friend of mine that his parents came over after World War II, and just like you, they were ethnic Germans living in Yugoslavia, and they came before the war started, but they had family in Cleveland, and they came and they both worked. He worked downtown in one of the department stores his whole life. But when they came over, they just each had a suitcase. That's all.
Well, yeah. I mean, we had a wooden box. Matter of fact, I still have the box that was Mom's box, huh? In the basement. A wooden box, that's where our stuff was in. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. 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 Yes.
The village where you grew up, was it all ethnic Germans, or was it a mixture?
All ethnic German. I think toward the end, yeah, not I shouldn't say toward the end, yeah. There was maybe one or two families in our village that were Croatians, but all the rest of them ethnic German, yeah.
And how long had your family been in Croatia? One generation or several?
For 250 years,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. I was going to mention that, but I'm not quite sure how to do that. There is a place in Germany, actually the Black Forest, where the Danube starts. Okay, there is an area there that's called Schwabenland, meaning Swabian land. Okay, and that's supposedly where my ancestors came from. And the reason for that is because, after the German empress, which was about 1717 till 1780, Maria Theresa, after 100 years probably of fighting the Turks, they finally pushed them out. And after they did push them out of their territory, she promised people 40 acres and a mule if they would take her up on it and migrate or whatever into Yugoslavia, which now is Yugoslavia. And I think they started at that place at the Black Forest in Germany, right in the Stuttgart area. So those people that came down the Danube. Okay, somebody said it looked like matchboxes down Danube because that's the way. Yeah, they're called Danube Swabians. Okay, they're ethnic German, but that small part of it or amount was actually called some guy in the 1920 or something like that. He named them that, and that's what it is. So they call them Danube Swabians or Donauschwaben in German. Yeah. So that was about 250 years ago. When the German people got there, okay, that land was empty. It was a marshland. There was nothing there. Not even the Croatian people were there. So the German people were there before the Croatian people were there. So how can you be, and many people ask, how can you be a German? You're born in Yugoslavia. For them, there was no Yugoslavia. That was their land. Yeah, they were there before the Croatians were there. They died. The first wave, they said they moved in there 3 waves. The first was death because they died of malaria and whatever else. The second wasn't that great, but the third wave finally was enough to sustain the people. In German, it rhymes. It says, Tod, Not, Brot. Death, want, and bread. But it was the third wave that they finally made a living. Yeah. So they had the right to be there. And apparently German was kept all this time because, let's say, 250 years ago, we still spoke German 250 years later. I did. I didn't know any, well, I shouldn't say I didn't know. I knew some of the Croatian, the cuss words. But other than that, yeah. Even as a 10-year-old, you hear him all the time. Yeah. Anybody else?
Did you and your wife ever get to travel back to
Yes.
see,
Yes.
to visit the places?
And we went back to our village, and our village, believe it or not, has not changed. It was worse than when we left. 50 years later, it was still as bad or worse. Because the houses were given to the Croatian people by Marshal Tito. So they didn't take care of it. So they were definitely not what they wanted. And there were no Germans left. There were no Germans left. They were all, even in the 1990s when we went over there, whenever you talk to some people, they always, oh yeah, I know the people from my village, which was called Breznitz. But they always would look around, even as late as the 90s. They were always afraid to talk about the German. Yeah. So right now, there is no German in probably not in Yugoslavia. No. They were all either left and came to America, which is smart. A lot of Germans went to Brazil. Brazil has got German villages, believe it or not. Yeah. So yeah. So we're all over the place now again. So be careful. We may take over. Okay. Yeah.
This is a funny question, but when your family came here then in 55 or whatever it was.
51.
51, okay.
Yes.
I came in 50, but did your parents speak about the past?
Never.
Never mind either. What was it?
I suppose it was something to be forgotten, not to really remember.
That's it.
Yeah, and I think that was, it was never mentioned until I took that doggone course. Anyway, so I wanted to, and I never intended to, how should I say, research anything. All I wanted to do, for my kids at least, and of course now they show more interest than they did when I wrote it. But anyway, it was never my intention to research anything or anything like that. It was never, yeah. Yes.
So did you continue to work at Goodyear?
Did you continue to work at Goodyear?
Did I do what?
How long did you work at Goodyear?
Oh, gee, I don't know. Not too long. 19 years, I think, and then, of course, I had problems with some guy tried to buy him or whatever, and then we lost the aerospace, and I was laid off, and I was hired in aerospace, and then later on ABS. So I retired from ABS. Yeah, yeah. And here again, because I was such a great worker, I retired early.
And then the fun jobs came.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else?
You said that you were in the Marines.
Yes.
Now, you weren't a citizen yet, were you? Were you a citizen? How did you get into?
No, I was not a citizen.
How did you get into the Marines?
Drafted?
Uncle Sam wanted me because I was a great guy. I don't know. No, I was not a citizen. But it was not a written thing, okay? There was no writing going on. But I think there was an oral agreement that we would not be a burden to the state and that we would be eligible for draft. A lot of the young people my age, the ethnic Germans, a lot smarter than I, when they took the test, you know, to be drafted or whatever, if they gave them a cow and a calf and a horse and a whatever, they would put the cow and a horse rather than the cow and a calf. And so they failed. You know. No, I was a lot smarter than that. I said, yes, I want to be a Marine. No, not really, I don't know. But anyway, I was not a citizen. There was another part which I was going to talk later on maybe. So when I got out of the service and I was looking for a job, and I did go to Goodyear, and Goodyear told me they can't hire me because I'm not a citizen. Years later, after I worked for Goodyear for I don't know how many years, I had one of the purchase orders. I turned it over while I was at aerospace, looked at it and it says, you can't handle this unless you're a citizen. Yeah. But, I had to handle it. It was my job, so, yeah. Yeah. I mean, we had a great beginning. We had great neighbors. But there's always 10%, okay? When I worked at Goodyear, okay, they would tell you, you know, go back where you came from, you know, because of people like you, my people, or our people out of job, and this. I didn't mind that, okay, because I can see that. I was in supervision, okay, because I was a college graduate, you know, and they put me in city. I didn't start out. I started out in a great department. It was called Inner Plant Relations. And don't ask me what kind of relations, but it was inner plant relations, yeah. And we're supposed to be in touch with our outside plants and all this and that. I can understand that. I mean, he is a young guy, you know, just coming in, can hardly speak English, and he's telling us what to do. So I can see where there would be kind of, but the only time that I ever felt bad is one day, and I worked in inner plant. I was not in supervision. I had all kinds of jobs. But anyway, I worked in inner plant, and I had some kind of connection with the traffic department. And one morning I walked in, and the guy looked at me and he says, "What are you doing here? I thought we killed all of you last night or yesterday." Now, that hurt. Yeah. And what he apparently at that time they had a show that was called Combat, and I think that's what he was watching, and that's where the Germans fought the Americans. But that, other than that, you know, but you accept that. That's not even 10%. That's a small minority. That's not the American people. That's not, yeah. Or you have, like, in wintertime, one time at my dad's house, we wake up in the snow, and on the bank of our house, this is Heil Hitler, you know. But yeah, that's not the people. That's just one. So you overlook that. Yes.
I worked at Goodyear Aerospace. I started there in '86, and I worked till 2020 through Morale and Lockheed Martin.
Okay.
I started Goodyear Aerospace in '86, and I was there for a couple of years. And one of the managers called me in. He says, "Tell me, what kind of hunky name is Babiak?" And I said, "Oh, slow walk." He
Yeah.
made me laugh about it.
Yeah.
He was a Slovenian.
Yeah, it definitely didn't sound German, did it? No.
But that was before political correctness came.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great life. It's a great life. Yes.
Got a remarkable story, but my math is right. You're 90 years old.
You figured it out when I said I was born in 34?
That's remarkable too.
Yes, I lead a clean life. I mean, gee.
What do you mean?
Well, yeah, I study all the time. Yeah. I mean, you know, I went to school for so many years. It's
And he goes to the Y every day.
anyway, going back
Go to
to
the Y every day.
every day. Yes, yes. I go to the Y every day.
For
Yeah,
15 years or didn't
Yeah.
do anything.
some people go to work out. I have to go there to watch the people work out. I never told you about my youngest daughter. No, she came up there and I said, how can you get a C? I mean, what is the matter with you? You know, you don't get that. You know, big hours come in into A's and nothing but A's, you know. And she has a C. She looked at me, she says, Dad, I saw your report card. Yes.
You said you served in the Marine Corps. Did you serve during a war?
No.
in the United States?
No. No, they kept me back there to entertain the young ladies. I worked in machine shop. I worked in machine shop when I came over, before I was drafted, volunteered. And so when I was in the Marine Corps, they put me in machine shop. So I worked in machine shop. It was just like going to work. Go to work at 8 and, you know, march to chow and fall in and fall out and fall over or whatever, which I did a few times. Yes. Anybody else? Yeah.
You often speak to audiences like this, and if so, how many do you think you've spoken to?
Have you ever done this before?
What?
Spoken in front of a group?
No. That's why I'm really, if you notice, I'm kind of shaking. Yeah. That was the same thing when I had to take speech when I went to Akron U. I had to take speech. And I said, well, gee, I said, you know, I'm going to shake. And of course, in order to quit shaking, I would try to tell a joke. And I told him that I was a DP. And he looked at me and said, well, yeah, DP, I'm a displaced person, and all this. In my case, I consider myself a delayed pilgrim. Okay. Okay.
Any other questions out there? Before he does, and just a couple of quick things. Again, I want to start this youth club, so we have some youth in here. Fritz, you're not eligible, sorry.
Well, just because I turned 90?
Yes. And maybe we'll start one for older adults.
Yeah, okay.
But, so I have that sign-up sheet here on your way out. You can sign up if you're interested. And do we want him back in for a
Thank you. Thank you. Well, the other half is going to be a lot happier. I think one of the greatest, two decisions that my parents made with one of them to leave Croatia when we did, and the other one to come over here, because my parents were in their 40s at the time, and they didn't want to go to America. We weren't treated badly in Germany and Austria, and they were supposed to be friends. How are we going to be treated in America? And they are our enemies. So they said, well, hope for the best. Just go one more time and see what happens. And that was one of the best decisions they ever made. Yeah. So, yes, I may have been born over there, may not have been a Croatian citizen, which I don't think I am. I'm ethnic German, you know. But I have been an American the longest. 70-some years. Can you believe that? Gee.